Hello, guys, and welcome to D6 Evolution. I'm Lewis here, and I'm here with Simon,
Hello.
and we're here to talk about the new Chaos Knights books. Are you excited, Simon?
I am. This is going to be quite interesting, this one.
It's going to turn you from the dark side, is it?
I'm not sure yet. Well, we'll see after this. We'll see how we think of it.
The nice thing about your Knights, and for anyone that hasn't seen it, check out some of our battle reports because Simon's Knights are absolutely fantastic. And I think, with the ghost heads on your guardsmen that you play, and the big buildings on the back of your Knights, you could definitely play them as Chaos. No one would argue with that. I think you can get away with both. So let's see if there's some exciting stuff in this book that might be able to tempt you over to the dark side.
Let's do it.
So for guys, if you haven't watched us before, we're a competitive YouTube channel. We focus on tactics and ways to improve your game for playing competitive tournaments and on the competitive scene in general. Please check out some of our videos. If you like what you see, as always, please do subscribe. We've just hit 10,000 subscribers and we want to keep on going. So Simon, let's talk to begin with about how we're going to approach this video. So first of all, we haven't got the book just yet. The book comes out tomorrow, and we're very excited by it. We have seen all the leaks. I've pretty much read every page of the book by now. Yeah. It's all available online. So we may get a few things wrong, points, and a couple of the wordings and some of the things we might be not totally clear on. But what we're trying to do is, rather than do what some other channels do, which is like a full page-by-page turn review, we're going to do something very similar to what we did for the Vigilus books, which is just talk about things we like, interesting things that have come out of it, cool ideas, combos, perhaps a few list ideas, and just have a general chat about what we feel like this book is going to affect the meta. So if you're ready to start, Simon, should we get into it?
Yep, let's go right into it.
Brilliant. So let's start with thinking about what the biggest differences are between the Imperial Knights book, which has been out for quite some time now, and the Chaos book, which is obviously just coming on the horizon now. What do you reckon, Simon?
So I think the biggest thing the difference between the two books we've seen so far is we do not get households this time. Mm-hmm. Instead of getting Mechanicum and Imperium households, we just get two distinct classes of knight now, which is iconoclast and I can't remember, the other one is Infernal is the other one.
So the iconoclast, it represents sort of fallen houses. So this would be like your House Ravens and your House Hawkshrouds and things like that, but they've just wrapped it under one. And the Infernal, that represents the sort of the Dark Mechanicum, similar to the Admech Knights of the Imperium book. But rather than having been subdivided into sort of 6 different books, they're only just lumped under one, and then you get some different strategies and relics that can help you customize off the back of that. How do you feel about that then, Simon? That's a big change.
I think initially I was quite disappointed. I was hoping to see some really iconic fallen households that we've seen in the Heresy. House Malanax would have been amazing to see. But I think the way they've gone with this is probably, it makes the most sense to not have huge amounts of bloat, considering that, if you want to ally with more chaos stuff, it just makes a bit more sense to keep it a bit more simplified.
No, I agree with that. I also think that it gives you an opportunity to more customize each individual knight, because you're not going to be playing sort of 3 of the same with the same sort of strats, basing off the House Relic. You're going to have, each one can be individual, you can paint them differently, you can give different relics, and that creates the feel of the chaos rather than being a bit more uniform as what Imperium did.
Yeah, so the Imperium having very set knights, like the Gallant and the Errant, with Chaos having kind of one generic knight chassis that you can just mix and match. Yeah, again, with that sort of Chaos element, it makes no sense to have this kind of household unification between the armies. It makes more sense to be a bit more sort of loose with the army structure. So not having households kind of makes sense.
Yeah, no, and I'm totally behind it. And when you see some of the power in the book, they definitely make up for it in some cases.
Yes.
I would say that I've noted a couple of things. I think there's a lot less survivability in this book. You don't get a 2-up armor save. To get the AP -1 reduction to AP 0 is you have to be lucky on a roll, or you have to pay quite heavily to invest into it.
Yeah.
There is a 4-up save against ranged attacks, an invulnerable save, but there isn't quite as much as there is in the.
Well, they've moved that one to be a relic, so you can't have that. It can combine with something else to make it a bit more survivable. So you can't have the 2+ armor and a 4+. that you
Yeah.
invulnerable like you can with the Imperium.
Yeah, well, it used to have the 2-up armor save, and the AP -1 becomes AP 0, and the damage 2 becomes damage 1, I think, is another one
Yeah.
that they have. So it just that sort of stuff is really what makes those some of those knights really survivable. Also, I don't think they're quite as good as shooty. You do have a couple of relics, and we'll come into that later, that help improve that, but I just don't think across the board you don't have things like House Raven reroll ones, or some of the relic weapons that you have in the Imperium book. So
Yeah, I think that the trade-off comes at the fact that with the regular knight chassis, you can mix and match your weapons, which you can't do with the Imperium. So the trade-off is you get more flexible weapon options on your knights, but the weapon options you do have aren't quite as buffed or as accurate as the Imperium versions.
Yeah, you don't have quite enough to boost them up to that higher power level. You're saying that is funny because I was writing a list the other day and I was just running short on points. And I was like, oh, if I just drop that second Avenger Gatling cannon down to a thermal cannon, I'm like, I'm just playing Crusaders.
Just regular Crusaders.
Exactly. I'm not taking any advantage of what I've got here. So yeah, but I think the flip side of that is what we do have is we're way more choppy chop. There is a lot better combat. The amount of extra attacks you can get is insane, and I love that about this book.
Yeah. So if you hated taking on gallants in combat, you are not going to enjoy some of the stuff you can do with the chaos.
No.
If you thought 15 stomp attacks was bad, then you're in for a bad time with this book.
We'll come into that in a bit, but you can be talking plus 20, plus 30 even in some cases. Stomp attacks is just insane. Well, straight off the bat, the iconoclast just gives you 1 extra attack. So your gallant, which would start with 4 normally, gets +1 because he's a gallant, so he has 5 attacks. He gets 1 extra attack, so he's got 6 attacks before he starts. So he's 18 stomp attacks before you even start. And then there's loads of ways of boosting further attacks down the line as well.
Yeah, I think if you give it 2 melee weapons as well, I think you gain +1 weapon skill as well.
It.
I think it's 5 as well.
So you hit on 2.
So you hit on 2s as well, which is quite nice.
Which is brilliant. And what I really like as well, and this is why they definitely have carved out a niche here, is that if you're going to go choppy and you're going to be better in combat, you need to be quick. You need to be able to get into combat, and they've given you a ton of ways of getting your knights quickly and into combat in this book. There's loads of ways of making them fast to get +2 inches, to your movement. You can get +2 to charge and advances and everything. It really has been designed with lots of ways to get your stuff into combat and then be really good in combat.
It is very characterful. It is very characterful for chaos. It is a very, very aggressive army. You want to be throwing it up the table as fast as possible. Whereas I think the Imperium Knights tend to really favour holding midfield. To have a combination of being, shooting as their objectives and being a little bit of combat. Chaos Knights want to be as aggressive as possible, and they've got all the tools in this book to be excellent at that.
Totally agree. So yeah, I mean that's just some of the big differences. Let's talk about some of the things we like, and some of the things we in that we don't like, but also some of the decisions you have to make. So I think straight away you've got to make a decision between Infernal and Iconoclast. As you mentioned, those are your 2 households. Both are insane. Honestly, the biggest problem that you have with this book is you want to be doing things from both, and obviously that limits you to taking one from each other. I am leaning towards Iconoclast. It's funny because I definitely started Infernal, but now I see the combination with the strats and the relics and putting them together into models that I actually want to take. I think that Iconoclast has got a little bit more depth to it in terms of toolkit options that let you kind of fight a few different things. Infernal, I think, one path.
I think if you're going for the very aggressive knight builds, then Iconoclast is definitely the household for you. It just gives you much more flexibility and gives you just much more options when you get to the enemy line.
Yeah, although you're funny because I agree with you that, and then as soon as you said that, I was like, yeah, but if you want to get into combat, you can't beat the Iconoclast. That's why the Infernal giving you +2 to move, +1 to advance, +1 to charge. So it's like, actually, you know what? They both are good at.
Infernal's kind of ambitions they get as their bonus of being Infernal is kind of cool. You do start to take mortal wounds, so you've got to be very careful with what you do here, but some of the things they can gain is ridiculous. +1 toughness. So if you want to be toughness 9, then okay, that's terrifying already. The other one obviously is demonic power. Which is excellent.
Yeah, I mean we can talk into a couple of things that we like and a couple of things that have sort of jumped out the book to us. To me, I think that if you're looking at that, you're looking at the Forge Rod Knights and what they can do. So straight away I'm thinking about the Castigator, the Archeon, the Lancer. those are 3 Forge Worlds. All of them are fantastic, and they start with 14-inch move. They advance 2d6, so with full tilt, you're advancing 2d6 and charging 2d6. You fast anyway. That's not before you do any of the silly business that you can do with them. You make them infernal, and then you obviously take D3 mortal wounds to take the +2 to move, +1 to advance, +1 to charge.
Yep.
So now you're getting 16 inches, advancing 2d6 +1 and charging +1. And then I think there's another warlock trait. Just have a look here. Yeah, there's you take the Slanesh Relic, that's what it is, which gives you +1 advance and +1 charge, and then also lets you fight first, which is amazing. Yeah, and then if you want to, you can take the Warlord trait that gives you the +1 to advance when you're in the opponent's zone, which pretty much you probably will be, because you're going to go 16 inches. You're going to be advancing 2d6
2d6 plus 2.
2d6 plus 2, yep, and then you're charging 2d6 plus 3. I mean, you're on average, you're about 30 inches. That's just average rolls, rolling 2 or rolling like a 3 up on a d6 for each of those 2d6 charges. That's insane.
If you're not screening that is absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
To be honest, if you're not aware of what that can do, and this is why you need to listen to videos like this, because until you play against it, you're not going to experience it, but someone could explain it to you, and then you can be wary of it. You put your little guard squad out in a line in front of your guys, and all of a sudden this knight's running all the way around the outside. Yeah. I've done that plenty of times with my Lord Discordance. I move them 14 inches and then warp time them. I'm going 28 inches. I'm often running around the screens and getting into what I need to get into, because you still get 2d6 charge off the back of that. So yeah, I mean, that is just absolutely insane. So yeah, you have the propensity to do that, and because there's so many different, we just obviously comboed everything together there to get your fast knight, but you could split that across, you don't need that much movement. You could split that across 2 gallants. One could have the Slanesh Relic, one could take it could be Infernal, get the extra move off the demonic power. So there's loads of ways of making that.
Even just regular shooting knights going into it's still an Imperial knight in combat. So even if you take the obligatory double Gatling knight, it's still, when that's in your face, that is a terrifying prospect to have to deal with eventually when it gets there.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it now then.
Might as well.
Seeing as you brought it up.
Yeah.
So I've been playing with this book, obviously since for about 4 or 5 days now, since the previews and stuff started happening, and I switched on. I want to play a lot of gallants. I was looking at the fast rolls. I was looking at a Castigator or a Lancer or an Archeon and doing what I just described there in terms of the movement. And then I was like looking at the list that I was playing it in, and I just, we'll talk a little bit more about lists in a bit, but I just ended up sort of defaulting back to some of the lists that I was playing originally and going, well, they actually are really much better lists. They're all round better. Maybe they'd just be good with like 1 knight in there rather than trying to get 4 or 5 knights in a list. And what I found really is that if you're going to play 1 knight, I don't think you can beat the double Avenger Gatling cannon. I didn't used to like it because I played against a lot of people in tournaments, and they don't tend to play knights very well. I think what a lot of people forget is, and you'll know this yourself, Simon, knights are probably better in combat than they are at shooting.
Yeah, so absolutely.
So when you've got a Crusader or a double Avenger Gatling cannon, a lot of people just sit there and shoot with it, and it's like you are literally using half of that model. You might as well just pay 400 points for a model using 200 points off, because it's just, you're just not using it to its advantage. Don't forget, guys, that they can fall back and charge, they can fall back and shoot. Every turn you should be charging into combat, stomping, jumping back, shooting, charging into combat, stomping, coming back and shooting. And that's how you maximize the damage. So when you've got your double Avenger Gatling cannon, it should be running straight at your enemy as if it was a Gatling. There's nothing, there's no reason.
The trap a lot of people fall into with the double Avengers, obviously you go, 24 shots, I want to be sitting back in at max distance shooting my enemy, and then you don't realise that at the end of it, it's still 4 attacks, and obviously with Titanic Feet, it's 3 attacks per attack, so it's still got 12 attacks, which are strength 8, AP -2, D3 damage. It's still awful to deal with in combat, and like I said, it can just then fall back, and then it can start shooting again and charge again. You use half a model.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, most people that run gallants, when they get into combat, they end up using the feet. They get 1 extra attack, which becomes 3 extra attacks from having the 2 close combat weapons, but they're often using feet. It's rare that they'll use the actual Reaper Chainsword unless they're fighting a big knight or something similar.
I've regularly run triple gallants in lists. I took triple gallants to a tournament recently, and I think I may have only used the chainsaw maybe once out of 5 games. Like,
Yeah,
you just
exactly.
stomp the rest of the time,
Exactly.
which, like I said, you can do with pretty much any knight, melee or shooty.
Yeah, totally. You got the double Avenger Gatling cannon. You're doing that anyway. So this is what I was thinking, right? So I put the double Avenger Gatling cannon in my list because it's a bit of extra firepower, and that's kind of something that I needed. And I was like, well, the problem I had with my list previously, incidentally, was more horde. I felt I was comfortable taking on knights or tanks or whatever. I always felt like I struggled with horde a bit. So I was like, how do I make this like a bit better against horde? And I was like, give it iconoclast. Well, obviously get +1 attack, then that's pretty good. And I was looking through the strats, and I was like, you know what? Vow of Carnage, I think, is the most insane thing. Depending on what you're playing against, it's all list dependent. But you come up against like an orc list of 100 boys or Gene Stealer Cole or something like that, and where you really need the horde. You've got 24 shots off your Gatling cannons. You've got 2 D6 heavy flamers, if you're in 8-inch range, which you will be because you're going to try and get into combat. And then I take the Iron Storm on the top for an extra D6 attacks.
And a stubber or a melter gun.
And honestly, don't forget. Well, no, not the melter gun. We're going for stubbers because we need massive shots here, right? So what I'm thinking in that matchup, when this is specific to those kind of horde matchups, is you charge forwards, you shoot everything that you can shoot at stuff that's gonna die, and you max out your attacks because the Vow of Carnage is iconoclast strat. I think it's 2 CP. It might even be 1 CP.
1 CP Vow of Carnage.
1 CP at the beginning of the game, and it lasts the whole game. That's what's amazing about the vows. And so every 10 models you kill, you get an extra attack, which is an extra 3 attacks because you're using your stomping feet all the time. So first turn, you just shoot all of those shots. You should be getting 10 to 20 models picked off the board. That should be quite comfortable, which gives you an extra 2 attacks. You start with 4 base, so that gives you 6 attacks, and then because you're iconoclast, you get an extra 1, so you've got 8 attacks. But you charge into combat. 8 is the feat, so that's 16, 24 attacks. So then you stomp stuff with 24 attacks. Anytime you kill another 10 models, you get another attack, which next time will be 27 attacks, and it'll be 30 attacks and 33 attacks. If that thing goes unchecked, which obviously it will draw a lot of firepower, and maybe that's the point of it in the list, it will rack up so much damage off in a horde and be able to just clear 30 attacks on the charge, stepping back, shooting with 24 shots on its autocannons. It's putting out 50-60 attacks between shooting and charging. It's just
it's something insane. It's just, I mean, if ever there was the most annoying distraction Khan effects in the world, it's going to be Chaos Knights, because you're going to have to deal with it. You have to deal with it, because as soon as your opponent only needs to experience that once to know that I have to do all that, and every time I play these guys now, they have to die immediately, because you cannot let them go unchecked, because they're just going to just rampage through hordes. I mean, I was just thinking that you just march it forward, you fire everything into your screen, get loads and loads of kills for killing the screen, and then you just charge straight into the back line, straight through the screen, into something nasty, Lehman Russes, and you just go to town on them, and you hit with 24, potential attacks, 30 plus attacks.
Yeah, let's not forget that 24, 27, 30 attacks, it will be in that bracket easily, because that's only 2-3 squads of horde killed. Those are strength 8. AP -3 because you're iconoclast. D3 damage attacks. That's not just 30 strength 4 attacks. That's 30 strength 8 D3 damage attacks at AP -3. There's nothing that can survive that. And this is the thing I was looking at the double Gatling cannon why I was so excited about it, because what you then is you've got the flexibility. So you take the Vow of Carnage, okay, if you're fighting horde. If you're fighting against tanks, you take or Eldar flyers, you take the Vow of the Beast Slayer. I think it's called Vow of Beast Slayer, the Beast Slayer one. And what that does is that gives you reroll wound rolls of 1 against something that you're attacking that has a wounds characteristic of 8 or more, which for the most part is every kind of tank there is out there in or plane. So if you're playing like the 5 Eldar planes, this little toolkit knight you have switches from being a horde killer like we've just described by the use of taking a different stratagem, which is at the start of the game, and then giving it a different relic. So you can give it, perhaps, if you're playing the Eldar Flyers, the Helm of the Warp Eye. Now all of a sudden, those 24 Gatling cannon shots and the D6 shots off at the top of it are re-rolling all hits and re-rolling wound rolls of 1 against the targets with 8 or more wounds, which is like all the flyers that you're fighting. And all of a sudden, it's absolutely amazing in its role as a backfield shooter.
And firing an aircraft with no penalties to hit.
Yeah, exactly.
No
And then if you want to
penalties.
give it the Trail of Destruction and rerolling all hits as well, you will rip. I mean, I did the maths on it. If you I did it for the Infernal one actually, which is where you've got one gun that's got the +1 damage. So if you do the Infernal version, which don't give you reroll ones, then you will kill a plane and a half a ton. And if you do it with the Infernal, with the iconoclast we were just describing there, it was certainly a plane. It's a plane and a chunk and a couple of wounds off the next one. And that's pretty much guaranteed. You can pretty much be comfortably taking that. That's just with the Gatling cannons. Obviously, you've got the big shots and everything else, and the flamers and everything else you're doing. And you should still be charging into combat and then falling back and shooting them and charging into combat again, because you're still able to do all that. That doesn't affect your ability to shoot. So, yeah, I think that the ability to just switch up in the moment, depending on what you're playing, is just absolutely fantastic. And I just think one iconoclast double Avenger Gatling cannon has got to be a good addition to a list. At least my read so far, if I haven't played it.
I think it was very good before the book came out.
Yeah.
And this book has just made it even better, honestly. Yep. I can't see any Renegade Knight list going to a tournament not taking at least one double Avenger Knight.
Yeah.
And just giving it Helm of Warp Sight just for the ignore minuses, because that's so good.
Yeah.
So good, because there is so much -1 to fight against. Harlequins, flyer lists.
Plague Bearers. Plague Bearers are like one of the most prevalent things right now. I see them a lot. I mean, there's a lot of good Chaos lists going out there. TJ Lanigan and Jim Vessel running the big Plague Bearer list. Everyone's trying to copy them. And with Knights coming up, it's an obvious default. You're playing a couple of Knights, people are always going to start with Plague Bearers as a battalion or something with that. So I think you're going to see a lot of Plague Bearers. And you're right, that just totally helps mitigate it, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think the other one that it's going to be good against is, because we've seen a rise in its popularity, is going to be the Custodes Caladius tanks, with the guy with the banner with the -1 to hit. Again, just ignoring that banner. Just throw tons and tons of firepower into them, and then obviously you can give it the infernal trait of +1 damage, +1 strength, and then you're wounding those tanks on 4s with 24 shots.
Yeah. Well, but actually, bear in mind that only happens on one weapon.
Yes. So 12 shots wounding on 4s, and then the others are wounding on 5s. But it's still going
to do it.
Yeah.
Actually, do you know what? Because it was only one weapon, that's what started me looking at the Castigator. But I've always loved the Castigator. I actually think for me it's my favourite looking knight. So it's the Forge-World Knight. If anyone doesn't know it, he's got the double Gatling cannon. It's like a bolt gun, but like a
Castigator bolt cannon.
Castigator bolt cannon, and then the sword, the warp blade or whatever it is, and he's kind of like running forwards. It's a sick looking knight. Definitely could work in Emperor's Children kind of colours. And the reason I looked at that is because that's actually essentially the same as the Avenger Gatling cannon. It's the same profile, except it's 14 shots rather than 12 shots. So if you're going to boost the damage and strength by 1 on one weapon, you might as well do it on the most shots you can get out of a single weapon in a night. So that knight's 430 points base. That is an absolute steal. That's with the 14-inch move, flat 5 damage on the spear, and then the 14 shots, which if you make it infernal, you're going to give it strength 7.
Strength 7, damage 3. Yeah.
Damage 3. Oh, 14 shots as well. And then you get into combat, and then all of a sudden you've got that warp blade with a damage 5 if you need it, or the feet. A
lot of people give the Castigator a bit of stick because its weapons only damage 5 rather than damage 6. Which everyone's like, my answer is like, well, who cares? You're never going to use it. You're going to stomp with it most of the time anyway. So the damage 5 means nothing.
Let's look at the things you're attacking. Let's say you're attacking like most tanks in the game. They're like 11 or 12 wounds, right? Yeah. So you need 3 attacks, whether it's 6 wounds attack or it's 5 wounds attack. Because no, that's like, because actually if it does 12, no, that doesn't work at all.
No.
I was thinking about when you got Feel No Pain. That's when that actually makes a big difference. So, but actually maybe it is much better. I'll take it back.
It's weird because the Castigator in an Imperium list actually isn't that good. So because they have the Relic, which is Endless Fury, which is a relic for the Warden, which gives it 14 shots, and I guess every 6 to hit gives it an extra hit.
Yeah, which is amazing.
The Castigator becomes basically pointless, just because a more expensive, worse Warden. But in the Chaos book, it's really good. 2 extra shots, and obviously with a book that's more focused on the melee side of the army, the Castigator is an amazing choice for that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, as we described earlier, that's the 14-inch move base, which means that obviously you can get it up to 16-inch move. It's the 2d6 charge, which if you're using the full tilt strat, which then obviously get +2/+3 to, and then flying that thing and you get into combat 100%. The only choice really, if you're going to go down the Forge World route and go for those fast knights that we've described, is between that, the Archeon, and the Lancer. The Lancer is interesting. I think the Flame is nice, and the Infernal. We just described, +1 strength, +1 damage weapons. The Infernal Flame on is it 3d6 on the Archeon?
It's only 2d6 on the Archeon, yeah.
On the Lancer, sorry. It's 2d6 Flamer, but it still auto hits damage 4 with the +1 damage, like I think strength 8 or something. That is really good. But if you park that to the side, I think your choice is between that, because that's more expensive points wise. I think you're at 420 or 430. I think is the choice between a Lancer and the Castigator. The Castigator has the bolt cannon, which is amazing. The Lancer gets the invulnerable save in combat, which is because of 4 invulnerable save in combat, which is just amazing. Do you know if you can use rotate iron shields on the Lancer?
Yes.
On the Archeon?
Yes, you can. Yeah, absolutely.
It's called like in the Chaos book. It's called like a Ion Gauntlet or something. Or it's got a different name. I wasn't sure because it's got a different name whether you can actually use rotate iron shields on it. But
as far as I'm aware, and how it's been played by I think everyone, is that when you rotate iron shield, it affects the invulnerable save as well, because it's still an ion shield save. It's just, and the Iron Gauntlet just means it's in combat as well, which is quite nice. So it means that if you rotate it, you get a 4-up in combat.
Yeah, you get a
4-up. Oh no, because you have 4-up in anyway now.
You used to be able to get
you used
a
3-up, yeah.
Yeah, but you can it gives you a 4-up out of combat, which is nice.
I think that's a really good argument now for the Atrophos, for the Mechanicum Cerastus Knight, which is really, really good. So 4-up against shooting, 5-up in combat. Obviously, you can rotate them at that 4-up in combat. Get a wound back every turn. Quite short range weapons, so you want to be throwing it up the field as fast as possible anyway. I think you can give it +1 toughness, make it toughness 9. Yeah. That becomes a really, really solid knight to be. It's a lot. It's expensive. It's 550 something points. It's pretty pricey, but if you want a big, nasty, fast, tough knight, that's pretty good.
And it looks sick as well.
It looks great. Awesome. It looks amazing.
Yeah. Well, the other thing to don't forget about the Forge World Knights, and this is also what sort of was kind of piquing my interest, they start at 27 wounds. So if you are going to go down the Infernal class, you're taking D3 mortal wounds. We'll say you take a 3 on the first hit, you're down to 24 wounds. Well, that's what all knights start with anyway. You wouldn't notice the difference. It's
I think Infernals. I can't remember if I've seen it. I think Infernals have a way to get wounds back somewhere as well. I think it's that they kill stuff and they.
Yeah, it's 2 CP in combat. Every time you kill a model on a 4+, you get a wound back.
Yeah.
Which is it's 2 CP, and then you have to kill a lot of models. Realistically, you want to be getting the maximum 6 wounds back, so you've got to be killing 12 models in combat on average, and then burning 2 CP for it. So it's it is possible. There would be times when you'll totally use it. I wouldn't build an entire list around it, if I'm honest.
No.
So, yeah, and actually, just while we're talking about that, one of the things that obviously is, as soon as you get the book, you kind of look at it and go, "Oh, that's amazing combo." I'll run in with my Infernal Knight, flying 100 miles an hour and doing ridiculous damage, and then I'll die, and then I'll get up on a, because there's a 3 CP strat to get up with D3 wounds remaining at the end of the phase, and I'll do that in my opponent's phase. And then in my turn, I can then pop the strat to get my health back, and I'll get 6 wounds back, and I could be risen again with 9 wounds, for example. Yeah. And I looked at that, and I was like, yeah, that's sick. I mean, you talk about distraction can't affect. What about something that dies, gets back up, and is on full fucking health again? Yeah. The problem with it is that that's 3 CP, plus you probably want to save a CP for the reroll if you're budgeting for it. So that's 4 CP to get up, and then it's 2 CP to get their wounds back. So you're talking about a 6 CP combo to start with. That's very situational, and then by the time you start giving that, that Knight a Relic, a Warlord trait, that's 8 CP, 9 CP, and then you'll start talking about maybe rerolling hits to get those, to definitely get those wounds back, and then you're talking about 10, 11 CP.
Yeah, and I think if you're running a pure knight list, so if you're running 3 big knights, you're probably only starting the game with only maybe 9 CP. You're getting 6 for the superior attachment and 3 for being battle forged, and then you start looking at the strats and go, "Oh, actually, I've got to be very careful with how I select my stratagems now, because I'm going to run out of very CP very, very quickly." And they don't really have. They do have a way to get a CP back every battle round, but it's that's not going to be.
It's not going to be enough.
It's not reliable long term over 4 or 5 turns.
Well, it's only you only. I think there's one on the warlord. Yeah, they're both relating to the characters. There's one on the warlord trait, and there's one on the Pacts and Damnations, which I think we should talk about now.
Yes.
And both of those are only as long as the knight's alive. So as soon as you kill the knight, you're gonna lose it. That knight, probably will die turn 2, turn 3, something like that. You're getting 2, 3 CP out. You're not going to get enough to warrant that. Just to round off on that point, then this is what turned me on to the iconoclast, because if you look at the specific stratagems, you're not going to really be using the heal one that often. It's quite, I mean, you could do, but it's not going to be like, you're not building for it. It's just more situational that it will come really useful for sure, but it's not part of the build. It's just because it's 2 CP intensive, I think. And then you look at that Knight Rise again. Well, the reason that's really, really super strong in the House Tyrannus in the Imperium book, like is because you can pay 1 CP to be fighting at full capacity again, whereas in this book we don't have anything like that. So if you pay your 3 CP and then you roll a 2 and then you pay an extra CP to re-roll it, you pay 4 CP, you get up with D3 wounds, you roll a 2, you got up with 2 wounds. Well, you're now hitting on 5s. If you're hitting against anything with minus to hit, is 6s or nothing. And then, you all of a sudden it's just not a very operational knight. You're not getting back to full capacity anyway. Even with that healing thing, it's only going to give you like 4, 5, 6 wounds or something. You're never going to be back to full starting strength. So you're just paying a lot of CP for a very ineffective unit. I don't think there's a lot of efficiency. Is that your read for it, Simon?
Pretty much. I mean, with the getting back up strat, I mean, for Tannerus, yeah, you're right. It's really, really useful because obviously you can get back up, you can go back to full wounds. You have access to getting wounds back. Yeah. You've got allies that you can easily ally in to give you wounds back. Yeah. So I mean, it works for them. I think with the chaos side of things, it's not really worrying about dying as much. It's more about killing as much stuff as before you die. Seems to be their thing. Yeah. That's what I get from it. The only thing I can think of where the get back up strat's going to be really useful is if you combine it with the warlord trait of being objective secured, and you really, really need an objective.
Yeah, I think I think I agree with you there. You mentioned that in the pre-chat. I think that's got to be one of the strongest things in that book. Yeah, the ability to just steal somebody's objective because you count as 10 models. Oh, that's just fantastic. You get up, you just take the objective again. They can't keep you down. It's a guaranteed objective, pretty much, isn't it?
It's very frustrating because obviously I've been playing the Imperial side for quite a long time, and there is a relic Imperial that does that, but you have to be Questor Imperialis to take that relic, and you very rarely run your households as Imperialis. You want to be running as Questoris. Sorry, Mechanicus, because you want to be Raven, or you want to be Tannerus, or you want to be Crast. Yeah. So you don't ever really get access to that, and obviously objective secured is a big thing that knights just cannot deal with. So having access to that for both Infernal and Iconoclast is just so good, good.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Well, we started wanting to talk about the Pacts and Damnations of the Dreadblades there. So the Dreadblades, I think, I've heard a lot of people sort of poo-poo them and say, I even read I think Nick Nanavati was talking about this today, saying, oh, it's marginal gains and it's not really worth any of the risk that you take with it. And you're totally right. There's nothing there that's super powerful that I would build for. Certainly not that I would take any kind of hit on my knight in order to get the efficiency of some of those things. There's some interesting stuff. I mean, I'd certainly say if you could, I talked about my double Avenger Gatling cannon knight. Well, if you can definitely give it, if you're playing against knights, and you can give it the reroll hits against characters, you'll just get your 2 CPs trail for destruction every turn.
I mean, I'm looking at these in comparison with the Imperium counterpart, which is the Free Blades, and these are just so superior to the Free Blades. Yeah. You gain all of the benefits of being a Dreadblade with none of the downsides of being a household, because obviously there's no households now. So there's almost no downside to taking some of these cool packs.
Well, the argument for the downside, and this is how I've seen it. Again, I've got to read the writing when I actually get the book in my hands. But the argument for the downside has been that obviously the upsides aren't that great, and the downsides are quite in some cases quite damning. That's
Yeah,
literally the point of them.
there's a few
And you
that
don't
are
want to
nice.
risk them. Like, I think the worst one in my mind is probably either Defiant Machine Spirit, which gives you -1 for your charge and advance rolls and -1 for your hit rolls, which is like you probably built your entire night around getting those extra ones, and then you're just going to give it up, and then it's like, why even bother? But even like not being able to fall back can really affect you. Having to charge and shoot the nearest thing. These are all quite big things. But in my mind, I look at it like this: if you take and if you're going to take a Dreadblade, you have to build for it, I think. If you take the Dreadblade Relic, particularly on a melee knight, which is, I think, probably one of the best places for a Dreadblade to be, the Relic gives you a 5+ invulnerable save in combat, which is where you want to be. That's why I think that's really valuable. I'd just almost take the Relic for that anyway. And then it gives you 1 Pact and 1 Damnation of your choice. So my argument is this: you take that's in addition to the one you would normally get for being a Dread Knight. My argument is this: you take that and you take Know of Profane Secrets, which gives you +1 leadership, and you gain 1 command point at the start of each round, which is really interesting because that's not a roll for it. A lot of those are like roll a 5+, get a command point, which is why you don't normally take them. That is just if you're the start of the battle round, if he's on the table, you get a command point. You will be getting 2, 3, maybe even 4 or 5 command points out of that. That's strong. And then you take the Forsaken as your damnation, which means that you can't do any stratagems on them. But the thing to remember about this with damnations, I didn't pick this up straight away, is that you have to roll a leadership check at the beginning of each turn. Your leadership 9 on knights usually. So basically, if you roll, I don't know if it's equal or over, if it's just over. What is it on the free blades?
I think it's over. I think if
it's
you
over. So
I think if you equal, you're fine.
Okay, so if you're leadership 9, you need to roll 10 or more, which is unlikely. It's 10 or more. It's only two opportunities of doing that. But if you give yourself the Know of Profane Secrets, you get +1 leadership, and the Forsaken actually gives you, for some reason, a subtract 1 from the result. So that makes you leadership 10, and then you subtract 1 for the result. So unless you roll double 6s, you aren't going to be affected by your damnation. And yes, you're taking 2 damnations there, or maybe even 3 damnations to get the ones you want. But you're only going to be affected if you roll on 2d6, roll a double 6, and then that's if you don't use a stratagem to re-roll it. So I don't know. I can't see why that would be that concerning to me. I think to take the bonuses on, I'd risk it, particularly if you then are able to pick your damnations and you pick ones of the least important ones. So to me, another good one I would take would be the Volatile Reactor. It's at the end of any phase in which you've lost a wound, you roll a dice on a 4+, you lose another wound. It's 1 extra wound on a 4+. If you've already taken a wound, for that turn, it's not. I don't see it as being that concerning, if I'm honest, anyway. And if that would only happen on a situation where I've rolled a double 6 and then re-rolled it and rolled another 6 in the first instance, the chance of this ever affecting me is so tiny that I think it's worth the risk, personally.
Yeah, if you're building for a Dreadblade and you're going the melee route, the other damnation I would probably choose is Warp Rage. If you fail it, your ballistic skill 6+. Who cares? If you've got 2 melee weapons, it doesn't matter. Even if you fail that, it's not a big deal for you. Just your Stubber or your Iron Storms in your 6s.
Yeah.
You're getting loads of bonuses going into charging, so that's where you go. But you're right. I think if you're going to go the Dreadblade route, you want to be building for it. I think you want to be going very specific with. You've got to have a very a very sure plan of what you're going to do with your Dreadblade. Like I said, the melee version is going to be the one you go for.
Yeah, no, totally, I agree with that. You can't fall back on that Warp Rage one, but then are you really falling back with your Gallant?
You're not falling back, no.
I mean, there will be situations where you really wish you would be able to fall back, but 99% of the time you wouldn't be worried if that ever came to fruition.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side of it, some of those, they don't seem so powerful initially, but to me, Galvanized Hull, I mean, I played the Butcher Cannon list with my Derridios and that. My entire army, I think it's Butcher Cannons, it's Zangors, it's Lord Discordant. So we take the Lord Discordants out there. Everything else in that army is AP -1, which means when I come up against someone that makes AP -1, AP 0, it's a big difference. It's +1 save, isn't it? So having a 2-up save. And so that is really powerful.
I think it's good against Tau as well, because I think Tau have is it a Warlord trait where any 6s to wound count as AP -1 or something like that? I think they've got a thing that's AP -1 as well, which is, again, an army that's very popular at the moment. That's pretty good against them as well.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of AP -1 out there, and often, like, I mean, at the moment, it is always the case that more shots with good damage is worth much more than, you know, AP, for example. So that's why butcher cannons and things are very popular at the moment.
Yeah.
But the other one I really like out of that is the Archfiend. Being able to heroically intervene and also consolidate. Is it consolidate? Is it just heroic interventions? 6 inches.
You can heroically intervene 6 inches, and then you can move 6 inches when you do so.
Yeah. I mean that's really good, to be honest. That'll catch out a lot of people because you can always heroic intervene when you're in combat. So it's oftentimes you're charging something, you'll kill it, and you'll be stood there, and then your opponent phase they'll start running past you. They need to disperse 6 inches away from you, and a lot of people don't do that. I mean, you catch people out with 3-inch movement. You know, a lot of the times multiple times I've caught people with my knights. You know, I charge into like 2 or 3 Lehman Russes. They pull them back just out of range so that they can shoot.
3 inches is surprisingly far, and when you've got a heroic of 6 inches, that's a pretty big zone of, denying where your opponent can physically move without getting, countercharged by a lunatic knight. It's very, very good, even just like zone denial. It forces your opponent to move away from it, which usually means less models in combat with whatever they've charged, which is quite nice.
Yeah, and you know what? We're all about making you guys better players out there. You can use that to your advantage. You know, if you've managed to get into the back lines with a gallant, for example, which you should be doing because you're flying, as we said, like almost 30 inches, or one of the Archeons or something like that. You can force your opponent into positions where their fallback move will only take them less than 6 inches away. Particularly with tanks and other knights. If you've got a wall on one part, and then you've got your, perhaps the knight is here. If you charge in the front of it, he can't go that way. He can't go this way. His only position is to go backwards. Well, if he's right against the back of the table edge, or if he's against another ruin, he can fall back out of combat, but he can't fall back more than 6 inches. Which means in your next turn, you're getting to heroically intervene again. You're getting straight back into combat. He can't get away from you. It's plays like that, setting them up, knowing them in deployment zone, right? Where's he deployed that knight? Oh, he's deployed it over there, or let's say, rather than a knight, let's say a Lehman Russ, for example. Where's he deployed that Lehman Russ? He's deployed it over there against that wall. If I can get in there from that angle, he's going to be stuck. He's going to have to be pinned against that wall back there. That means I can stay in combat for another turn, and that will dictate my whole game plan. And good players will spot that at an early stage and will be playing around it. So you should be looking for that yourself.
So an interesting combo I've just thought of with this as well, with this Archfiend, is I can't see anywhere where it tells you can't take relics on Dreadblades. So if you take the Slanesh relic, which means you can heroically intervene 6 inches, you can move 6 inches, and then you fight first, which is terrifying. So not only is your opponent got to be like, okay, I've got to be careful of this knight, but if he does heroically intervene me, he is going first.
Yeah,
that is terrifying.
Oh, and I just described one of the most likely scenarios of that happening is on, like we described, the Lancer or the Archeon or the or something like that, where you want to be taking that relic because it gives you +1 advance and +1 charge, and that's getting you up there in the first instance. And then when you're in there, slam into it. Yeah, it's fantastic. And as I said, if you take the Dreadblade and take the relic, you choose no profane secrets, you choose Forsaken, you choose Archfiend, and then you roll for 1 on the other damnations board because you really don't care what you get because it's so unlikely that you're going to roll 6 and then not re-roll it. So that straight up, you've just given yourself a 6-inch heroic intervene. The other one I really like there, just to finish off there, we talk about that Castigator again, is the demonic vigor, because whatever you roll on that dice is going to be really beneficial to you. It's one of those few times where you've got like a table of choices and actually all the choices are good. So if you've got a Castigator and you roll demonic vigor, on a 1 to 3 you add 2 to the move. Fantastic. I'm just suddenly moving 32 inches a turn. I've got an 18-inch base move. On a 4 or 5, you get +1 weapon skill, which is great because it hits on 3s and now it's hit on 2s. And on a 6, you get +1 ballistic skill, which is fantastic because I've got 14 shots coming out of my bolt gun, which is, if it's Infernal, is damage 3, strength 7, 14 shots. So I'm now hitting on 2s. Like any roll of that dice is going to make that Castigator better. So to me, Castigator, Infernal, Dreadblade, with the relic that gives you the choice of one of these and gives you a 5 invulnerable save in combat. Spot on. That's all you need. We got the Avenger Gatling cannon knight. We got to keep moving. What's the next one? Porphyrion, if we're speaking to you.
Porphyrion, yeah, my favourite, my current favourite.
I don't think that's all your points at that point. You actually do. I think your list could literally. It would just be a Gallant, a Porphyrion, and a Castigator.
or a double Avenger.
Double Avenger, Castigator, and a Porphyrion. I don't even know. I think you can do that. I think that's just the limit of points.
Yeah, you might get enough points for like an ally of some kind or something.
A single guardsman.
A single guardsman.
All right. Okay, let's start talking about. Let's just talk a little bit about relics, and then let's talk about some lists. So, the thing I do like about the relics, we talked about the Helm of the Warp Sight. We've talked about the Slanesh relic. The idea that these are all choosable at the beginning of the game, and most of them can be used on almost anything, really gives you that toolkit. And I think for this army, this is where it shines, is that with your Imperial Knights, you define your strategy, you put your models on the table, they're all House Raven, they're all going to shoot and reroll ones, whatever it is, and that's it. What's your opponent got? Let's play the game. Whereas with the Chaos Knights, I think there's a lot more decisions to be made at the start of the game. It's like, right, I'm going to make my Castigator, for example, he's going to be really fast. It's really important that I'm playing Tau. I get into them first turn. Oh no, I need to make him, really, really shooty. I've got a lot of flyers I've got to deal with. Let's give him Helm of the Warp Eye. Let's make him shooty. One we haven't touched on at all is I'm playing against Custody jet bikes, for example. I'm playing against Harlequins. I'm playing against something with big and vulnerable saves, demons, for example. You give them that Cornate relic. There's a relic there which switches off your invulnerable save, and then all your attacks ignore invulnerable saves. Well, all of a sudden, your bloody axe there, it's damage 5, damage 6 sword, is insta-killing a Custody jet bike with every hit. It makes hits on 3s, wounds on 2s. Pick up those jet bikes. They don't get a save, and they're dying instantly to each of my attacks or my 7 attacks or whatever I've got. So just the ability to start the game and switch up your strategy depending on what you're playing, I think that's really where the power of this book comes from, and that's mostly from the relics. And the
relics are really flexible in this one. I know with the Imperial book is like I said, it's basically the direct comparison here. With the Imperial book, a lot of the relics, or a lot of the really good relics, are locked to a certain household. So your household has to determine what relics you can take. With this, because there's no households, most of the relics can just be taken by everybody, which is kind of nice. There's actually, I think, only 2 relics which are locked to Iconoclast and Infernal. Iconoclast get a 4+ vulnerable save against shooting attacks. That's their unique one, which is really good. And then the Infernal ones get Blasphemous Engine, which is essentially the Hawk Shroud household trait, which is you double the number of wounds when determining the model's damage chart. Yeah, which is kind of cool.
They are kind of cool, but I'd say I looked at both of those and I was like, I'd never take those over any of the other relics, so I'm not concerned about whether I'm Infernal. In fact, the only thing I was worried about being Iconoclast or Infernal was the stratagems, because they're very different style stratagems depending on what you take, and I think the Iconoclast wins on stratagems, if I'm honest, just because of the value, the CP points cost of the Infernal ones are so expensive. The Iconoclast ones are like 1 or 2 CP, last the whole game, so that's why I went Iconoclast, but other people have different opinions. So
yeah, I think the only knight I can think of that can really benefit the most from that 4+ vulnerable save is the Porphyrion, which is probably the only knight you really want to be keeping at the back of the board, really. Yeah.
Is that the Infernal one? Did you say?
That's the Iconoclast one.
That's the Iconoclast one. Yeah. So you combine that with the can't be wounded by anything less than a 3 by anything more than 4, so yeah.
Well, 1, 2, 3s.
Yeah.
Don't do
always
anything,
win. Yeah. Which, if we can just make a note here, absolutely take that vow if you're playing against a lot of Smash captains. So I know, like Andy's been playing his Blood Angel Smash captains. He's absolutely loving them. Normally they wound knights on 2s, is it, or 3s? 2s, isn't it? Because they're strength 10.
The wound knights on 3s. Yeah.
The wound knights on 3s. Yeah. And then all of a sudden they're wounding you on 4s, I guess.
Yeah,
it's not 5s, it's 4s. Yeah. So yeah, like you definitely want to be taking that against Smash captains or anything that like any las cannons, melter guns. It's just not melter guns, las cannons. It makes a big difference. You've really got to look at your opponent's list and look at their strength of their weapons to determine that. If they've got +1 to wound, that's really strong as well.
I think that's the big thing. I think with this book, as opposed to most other books now, is a lot of your army selection is done at the beginning of the game. It's not so much when you make your army, it's when you start your game, because there are a lot of stratagems and a lot of relic and warlord choices, which are at the beginning of the game. It's the vows, isn't it? You choose the beginning of the game.
Yep.
You choose them. You choose your warlord traits. You choose your relics.
Yeah, you build your knight at the table, don't you?
Yeah, at the table. So, but it means that it's really your army can be very, very flexible. So if you're fighting, like I said, if you're fighting loads of flyers, I'll just take the Helm of a Warp Sight. I ignore to hit modifiers.
Yeah.
Or if you're fighting, loads of horde, I might take.
Carnage.
Carnage. Or if you fighting custodian jet bikes, I'll just take coordinate target.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very flexible army, probably more flexible than the Imperial version for definite.
Yeah, it is. The only thing I would say is that that's not for everyone, and we talked about this actually in the picking your secondaries mission video that I did with Scary just recently. Is that like when you start a game, particularly a tournament, when you're in sort of round 2, round 3, there's so much to think about at the start of the game. You really want to be mitigating those choices for yourself just to make it easier and have more time to make the important decisions. So like we said with the secondaries is that have some predetermined against certain armies, have ones that you take every time that just really suit your list. So when you're getting into the table, you're only making one choice, rather than choosing 3 secondaries. And I think it's the same here. If you're a good player and you know that book inside out and you've tried all the different relics against all the different combos, it's going to be super powerful because like you say, you build your knight at the table to fight what you're fighting. A similar idea to sort of the demon summoning. You take all your models and all right, I'm fighting this list, I'll bring out these demons, I'll fight this list, to bring out those ones. But for some people that's going to be a bit overwhelming, and they'll make an incorrect decision, or they'll rush decisions, and they'll find that they built their knight for close combat and really it was never going to get into close combat. They should have gone shooty, or they really thought the planes were going to be the problem, so they took the helm of the third eye, and then they get blown off the table because they couldn't make it into combat because they didn't have the move. So it can be daunting to have that many decisions to make, but it can also be very powerful if you can take advantage of it. High skill cap, that's called.
I think so. I think it's going to take a while before we see the very reliable combos that you're going to see at most tournaments. I think we're going to see quite a varied amount of builds of knights going forward from here, which will be really interesting.
Yeah, well, talking about that, let's sort of start to round off the video a little bit, just coming into the home stretch now, talking about different ideas for lists that we've had.
Yes.
So why don't you hit us with your idea of lists, and I'll bounce one off you after that.
So initially I was thinking of going something with knights and then a very minimum allies to just give me some CP. So I think CP is probably the biggest downside of this army, is you're going to need some kind of CP generation, because a lot of the cool stuff is quite CP intensive, especially the Infernal. So I mean, for me, I was thinking of allying in minimum Nurgle demons, so 2 Sloppity Bile Pipers and 3 units of 3 Nurglings, which comes in at 282 points. So it gives you roughly sort of 1,700 points of knights to play with, which I think should be enough for your melee knight, double Avenger Knight, and probably a Castigator, which will give you another 6 CP. So it should give you 14 CP starting, which is quite nice. You don't end up with very many allies, but the advantage obviously with Nurglings is for deployment you can deny. And you touched on that and sort of in the pre-chat earlier, is using Nurglings to sort of block lines of...
I used to love playing against knights, particularly because I was playing a lot of flyers before they were popular. But last year, at the end of last year, just after Tony Chu came second at the London GT with his love style list, I started playing that similar style list, and I used to love it because it was so easy to move block knights. And then I switched to, I was playing Elder at the time, and then I switched to playing Rangers, for example, when they could just come out at the start of the phase, and I'd done it recently with Nurglings as well. As soon as you can get scouts or anything that can move out at the start of the game before the game starts, you can block off all those alleyways. The problem with knights, and this is a big concern with knights, is that they're big chunky models, they don't have fly, so they can only fit where their base can fit. And a lot of people cheat this often just because they don't know the game or they don't really think about it. But if the base doesn't fit between 2 buildings, it can't go between those 2 buildings. You can't just turn it to its side and slide it through, and a lot of people kind of cheat that a little bit. But what that often means is that it only takes one model to mean that suddenly that can't fit through there. And because you move in your movement phase, which happens before your shooting or assault phase, you can't blow that unit off the table and give yourself the movement like you could with warp time or something like that. So it really is so easy just to move block a knight, and with flies you can still do it with flies, even though you can move through the bases. You can cause those problems for people to get through. And what I was thinking with the Nurglings, I haven't play tested this, I don't know if it actually works, is if you are playing the list you just described there, you've got 3 big knights, they're going to be doing you damage. You need to make sure they've got the paths and the routes through the terrain to get to where they need to be. So I was wondering whether it's possible, because you deploy Nurglings in the deployment phase, whether you could put them in the place right at the front of those entrances to any of those passageways between ruins or buildings, so that your opponent can't come into that space. You're essentially denying that space by the proxy of you being there. And yeah, okay, they're not going to be in the ideal position for taking objectives and things like that, but it just means that they're holding that route through, and then on your turn you can move and advance them out of the way, and then your knight can have a clean run rather than letting a squad of scouts deploy. And so if I was deploying that kind of list, I'd put the Nurglings down first at all the possible locations I think I'm going to be, and then my knights come down at the end, and then I've got clean routes. So I think that's an interesting use of them, but I'll have to play it to see if it works.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's going to be the biggest thing for especially this army, where it wants to be in combat, is going to be your enemy relying on screening your lanes to travel through. Like I said, big models, they need these really big paths to go through, and just being denied those paths is probably going to be the biggest hurdle for a knight player to deal with, especially a Chaos one that wants to be up the board.
Absolutely. I think, if I'm honest, I think the biggest miss in this book, and I can understand why, because they went so heavy to the melee and melee and speed element of it, is they don't have a fight again stratagem. I really thought they would have that, because that allows you to get that extra movement in the phase, get through, kill the thing that's blocking you, and then fight again to move the extra 3, pile in, consolidate, again, and that gives you an extra perhaps 6-inch movement to get into that next unit and to get around those screens or through them. I was surprised it doesn't have it.
I'm not sure how I'd feel against a fight against stratagem when you've just tanked 30 plus attacks from a knight, and you go, I popped 3 CP, I'll fight again.
Yeah, fair enough. And then at that point, you've just got 40 attacks.
Yeah.
No, I can understand that. Well, as I said, that's probably why it's too strong.
But,
okay.
Yeah, but the only other thing I can think of, and I think this is the pretty obvious one, I think a lot of people have gone with, is Red Corsairs. I think that's the other army list I can see. So when you take 3 units, at least 3 units of Chaos Marines, you gain an extra, is it 3 CP, I believe? 8 CP. So it's an 8 CP battalion.
Oh, yeah, so you gain 3 CP for having 3 Chaos units, but if you took a battalion, you'd get 8 CP, so it's an extra 3. It's really good. If I'm honest, it's 350 points, or I think it's 360 or something, I can't remember the exact point, which is pretty much the price of a gallant. So
I mean, if you take absolute minimum HQs of Exalted Champions, you're looking at 335-ish points, something like that, and
you got to weigh it up, because you got to go, right, okay, I'm going to take this gallant and he's going to have all of these extra powers because I'm going to use all these stratagems, or I'm going to take 2 gallants. It's like, when you're talking about 20-30 point difference, screw the battalion, take another gallant. that's it.
And then the only other obvious one I was thinking was is taking something from Forge World and taking Traitor Guard. It's the only other thing I can think of, which is basically it's your basic loyal 32, except worse in every way.
Yeah,
basically.
They don't have the move. They don't have shoot again, fall back and shoot, double shoot. That's what move is what makes that amazing, because those guardsmen can be moving like 20 inches a turn. They don't have the relic for the CP regen. Maybe not so relevant if you're going to take the packs that we were talking about earlier, because you get that anyway. But yeah, it's definitely nowhere.
It is the absolute epitome of a CP battery. It is literally there just to give you 5 CP. The actual the battalion itself is pretty useless for anything other than holding a backfield objective out of line of sight of your opponent, basically. But I think that's the only other one, because it's cheap. It's very, very cheap, which means obviously less points spent on allies, more points spent on knights.
Yeah, my mentality with these things is look at what you're spending it on. Don't just take the CP because you feel like you need CP because you're playing knights, you need lots of CP. Work out what you want from your knights. Say, right, I need both of these knights to have a relic, and both of them to have a warlord trait. Or maybe this one doesn't need a warlord trait. Okay, so I don't need to take that strat. I'll just take the one extra strat for extra relic. And then you look at what strats you're going to use. Okay, I'm going to be using full tilt, or I'm probably not going to be using full tilt. I'm going to be using this one at least once. Once you determine that, you go, oh, right, no, I need 7 CP. I have to have 7 CP before rerolls, before anything else. I just need 7 CP to make the list. And then you go, well, I'm starting with 9, so actually, do I need a CP battery? Probably not.
Yeah.
I mean, I did this with my chaos list. Is I stripped it down to 6 CP. That's all I need to play that list. Anything else is just superfluous. It's just me just re-rolling a damage, which is useful. But I was just wasting them. And when I'm hamstringing my list to get extra CP, and they're just for that, it's not brilliant. You really need to just be knowing what you're using CP for. So, although you can easily use them all, want everything, and then you're talking about 9-10 CP per phase per night.
Yeah, you could quite easily.
All right.
But, what about you? I mean, you've come up with some ideas for lists.
Of course, I have. It's my favorite thing to do. I'm going to start with something completely out there. Is I call it the War Dog pile. So I love the War Dogs. I love the name. I think I never used to be interested in the armor. Just another called War Dogs. All of a sudden, they're my favorite thing.
Yeah,
they haven't changed at all.
You told me about this, and I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Well, I was like, I've been playing a lot of Lord Discordance. Lord Discordance, absolutely amazing. 160 points a model. Just, I think it's one of the most efficient points model in the top 5 points models in the game right now for efficiency. 2-up save makes that, but if you take that away from it, it's very similar to a War Dog. I mean, War Dog has a 14-inch move, they need 12, which then you give them the Soul Pack to give them the 14-inch move. So that's kind of comparable. But it's just the amount of damage and the amount of attacks and stuff they have. It's kind of similar. And I was looking at them thinking, oh, iconoclast is really good because it gives you +1 attack. But that would become 2 attacks for them, and it becomes 3 attacks for the big knights because they can do a sweep with their chain cleave. So either you get 5 attacks with your 3 damage smash attack, or you get 10 attacks with your sweep. And I'm like, 160 points, 10 attacks. 14-inch move, T7 body. It's quite decent. It's got the melter spear as well. D3 attacks with that. 30-inch melter gun. That's good. How many of those can I take? And I was like, you probably take 3, because obviously that was what you assume it would be. But actually, and I've got to just double check this when the new book comes out. But certainly in the index version of it, you can take 3 per squad. They count as a drop, a single drop, and then they can be individual models off that. So you can take 9 because you can take 3 squads. You can see where I go with this. So yeah. 9 of those, 160 points a model. What else can I fit in for the last sort of 400 points, whatever I've got left in the list? Obviously, 3 Lord Discordants because they're also 160 points a model. Yeah. So the list is 9 armatures to War Dog, Iconoclast, and 3 Lord Discordants. Everything moves 14 inches. You've got 9 D3 melter guns at 30-inch range, and then you're charging in, and that's 10 attacks per model with the sweeps. You do. There's a couple of stratagems that kind of boost that. So I think with what I may think about, the Lord Discordants probably best play Red Corsairs. Gets you an extra CP, and they can advance and charge. I think that's really good. Gives you an extra relic as well. You get into combat there.
I did just want to mention that there is actually only a couple of relics which are restricted to the big knights, but most of them you can use on the War Dogs absolutely fine.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to take Cornate Target on a Warglaive with 10 attacks, go for it, absolutely.
Well, the 5 attacks and 3 damage is worth taking out. What I thought you could do is you could just slide that in. Is it Infernal Quest is a warlord trait, isn't it?
It's a warlord trait, yeah.
But you could pay a CP and put that on something that's not your warlord and still make like one of the Discordants your warlord. You slide that on one. You slide that on one towards the back, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, no, this one is objective secured and counts as 10 models.
Well, I was saying to you earlier, which I thought was kind of cool, which the Imperium don't get access to, was you can mix and match the War Dogs, which you can't do with the Imperium. So in the Imperium, you have to take a unit of Warglaives or a unit of Helverins. You can't mix them. With War Dogs, you can, because obviously with all the Chaos stuff, you can just mix and match their weapons. Yeah. So you could have a Helverin with the Warlord trait of sit back and count as 10 models sat at the back of the board, there shooting with 16-inch range guns at the back of the board on an objective going, okay, I'll just sit here for the rest of the game, while 8 Armigers just rampage up the field, which is kind of fun.
Lord Discordants.
And 3 Lord Discordants.
Yeah, but you see, if you're going for 8 running up the field, you should have 9 running up the field.
you want to make them all the same squad,
absolutely. And the other thing about that is you could split that over 2 super heavy detachments, so you're getting, is it? Do you get 3 CP, or no? You need a knight in there, so you get Oh no, if you don't make them,
So
I have to read this.
So for the Imperium, if you just take war armigers, you don't gain any CP. That's the only downside.
Yes,
You only gain a CP if oh no, if it's one CP. Sorry, I'm wrong.
yeah,
Yes, it's one CP for each attachment.
in the index, and I'll be proven wrong in the comments, I'm sure, but I'm pretty certain in the index, it's only if you give them a character, if you make them a lance, which means that one gets to be a character and then you get the relics. It's only if you do that that you lose the super heavy detachment of normally having 3 CP for having 3 super heavy units, unless you have a Titan. So at least one of those detachments, if not both, you could decide that you're not making the knights, the armigers as they are. You're just gonna give them. You're not going to make them a lance, sorry. In which case, you don't get the relics. I don't know if you get stratagems or warlord traits, but then you're getting 3 CP per detachment, so you'd end up with 6, 9, 10, and then if you read corsairs, 11. I don't know, but I'll have to look into that. But yeah, anyway, just my list there. It's a very lowest style list. 12 tanks running at your face 14 inches. So the only other list I think is worth mentioning, we talked a lot about the CP batteries and things like that, is just look at some of the other super heavies. You've got Mortarion is a monster. Now that Fly's changed back again, he's back on the menu and he's really good. And if you've got a kind of distraction Karn effects in an Avenger Gatling Cannon Knight and a Gallant or a Castigator or something like that running at you, and then you've got Magnus and Mortarion or one or either running around, who the hell do you target first and why does it matter? Target Mortarion, that Gallant's in your face. Target the Gallant, Mortarion's in your face. Target the Avenger Gatling Cannon, or leave him in the background. He's chomping up, getting extra attacks. There's no good choice there.
Well, Mortarion's quite terrifying because when he's in like melee range, doesn't he give -1 toughness to everything around things?
Oh, yeah, good point.
So if you have Mortarion and Knight sort of in your enemy line, -1 toughness, that means that most tanks are going to be going from toughness 8 to toughness 7.
Yeah, or 7 to 6.
Or the mirror match, if you're fighting regular Imperial Knight or another Chaos Knight, they're going to be toughness 7, which means that if you stomp them, you're wounding them with your stomp attacks on 3s.
That's amazing.
With 24 attacks. And
no, it's great. Well, I mean, most people will shoot Mortarion first, so you kind of know that, especially if you get like drop a CP and take walk time. So if you've got Mortarion and 3 Lord Discordants, and then I think you'll probably talk about 1 or 2 knights off the top of that, maybe 2 or maybe 1 with a couple of armigers, you know that knight's probably going to survive because he's got to be going. Or certainly in that list, I think a list would be Mortarion, a Gallant maybe, and 2 armigers, 3 Lord Discordants, something like that. You know your Lord Discordants are never going to be touched, which means they can totally be flawless host, for example, because they don't need any kind of survivability because they are not going to be shot. So always think about like what your opponent's going to be targeting against you, and you can totally be building a list around that. If you drop Mortarion, he's going to be going first, which means you can be taking some more high damage, less survivable options in the rest of your list. So.
I mean, if you go first with Mortarion, he gets time to make him buff himself up with psychic powers, make himself more survivable. I mean, that's a terrifying force to deal with. You got these knights charging up the table. You got Mortarion bearing down you. Who do you target? You got the Castigator with its 30-something inch move, all that. Up the board, and then you go, okay, well, Mortarion's dangerous if he gets to me.
Yeah.
But there is this guy right in front of me. So I mean, I think there's actually some play to be had. I certainly think we're going to probably see a Mortarion triple knight list. I think could be interesting.
I think Mortarion and 3 Gallants.
I'm thinking Mortarion, double Avenger, Gallant, a Forge World Knight, a Lancer, or a Castigator could be quite interesting. That could be quite fun.
The biggest problem I had, because I did try a couple of lists with Mortarion, is just you need a whole detachment for him. You're not likely to take anything else in Death Guard because he only could go with HQs, and the Death Guard HQs are rubbish. So you're literally just talking about him in one detachment, the Knights in another detachment, and then a CP battery maybe. Like Demons, I guess, is probably your option there. Or I really want to do something like Thousand Suns, but the problem as well with Mortarion is that you really need warp time. That's what makes him amazing. So you need a Chaos Space Marine detachment either to get a sorcerer or to be able to take the stratagem lets you drop one of his powers for warp time. So that's your option. So you've got to take 1 Chaos Space Marine detachment, 1 Knight detachment, and the Death Guard detachment. So then you're starting your list from that really constrained position, which means you haven't got a great CP battery because there's nothing really beyond Red Corsairs in that Chaos Space Marines that can do that. You're having to UCP across the board for your knights and for Mortarion. It's like, just doesn't seem like a list is coming out of that's going to be that powerful, if I'm honest. Is my read of it anyway, but I'm sure someone's going to come up with a fantastic list that works. So.
No, I think you're right. I think, like I said, I think we're going to see a lot of very, very different lists sort of for the next sort of month or so, and like lots of different builds. And I think as we start getting towards, I'm quite interested because obviously myself and Andy and Wes are off to the round 2 of the Grand Tournament next month in August.
Okay.
And it's going to be quite interesting to see what we see there in terms of what builds that people are going to be taking Chaos Knights to. Because I'm still now, with this book coming out the weekend, I'm on the fence whether I go with my regular Imperial list or whether I try and be a bit brave and try and work out if I can do a Chaos list for it.
Be brave, give it a shot. What's the worst that's going to happen?
Yeah, I don't know whether I'm fully convinced of committing heresy just yet, but yeah, once we've got the book and once we've seen final points and things, I think we're going to see some really interesting lists.
Yeah, definitely. So just to round it off then, the very last thing I just want to mention is, in my opinion, I think given everything we've just described there, they are going to be best for the most part in soup. I think you're going to see one knight, a gallant or a double Avenger Gatling Cannon Knight, or one of the 4-droid Knights, Castigator, Archer, and Lancer, or something like that, in a very strong Chaos list, because Chaos lists are so good right now. There's so many variants of them. You look at, the Jim Vessel style list is doing fantastically well. I'm a big fan of playing Thousand Suns, lots of Zangors, Purge Derridios, Lord Discordants, and a knight just complements that really well. Not just my list, but just in general, a lot of the lists just get complemented well by the knight. It's always been a bit of crutch for people to chuck a knight in a list, and I think that there's plenty of great options out there. So I personally think it's going to be one particularly well organized knight, a dread knight with a certain setup, a choice of relics to kind of make it a bit flexible, that plugs a gap in a lot of chaos soup lists. I don't know if like just pure knights are going to be that strong. I don't think they're as good as a entire list of being pure knights. I don't think it's as good as the Imperium side personally, but I think one knight could be very powerful. That's my take. What's your final closing thoughts then, Simon?
Yeah, I think just due to the fact that they are going to be quite CP intensive, you are probably right. I think Super's definitely going to be the way, competitive wise, we're going to see the armies going. So yeah, we're either going to see a single super heavy on an auxiliary detachment being buffered by lots of Lord Discordants, demons are going to be. I fully imagine that one of the big things we're going to see is going to be lots of plague bearers. I think that's going to be really popular, and maybe a double Avenger knight. I think that's going to be a good combo.
Yep.
I think there's definitely some play to be had with going like not full knights, but free knights. I think could be quite interesting. Free knights with some CP battery could be a
three gallants, keep them cheap. I can definitely
free gallants
see
could
that.
Definitely be a thing. Yeah, absolutely.
That's just a nice, like you can combo that with like some Derridios or some Predators or something with long range shooting, and then some troops to kind of like demon troops, maybe plague bearers.
Depending on final cost, I could definitely see maybe a single double Avenger and 2 gallants could be definitely a thing.
Yep.
Because I think the double Avenger is just so good.
I really hate that because I wanted to move away from them. I was like, it's so obvious. Everyone takes double Avenger cannons. But as the more I looked, I was like, they're just too good. You've got to remember, you've got to use both sides of them, but they're amazing. I mean, you say Plague Bearers, and I think Plague Bearers are going to be, as I mentioned earlier, going to be all over the scene. You Death-X Plague Bearers, you re-roll failed hits, and then you're doing 2 damage on your Gatling cannons.
Yeah.
You're picking up Plague Bearers, like they don't get a save. You're wounding them you're hitting on 3s. You can either automatically hit on 3s, so you ignore all their minuses to hit, or you re-roll hits, which almost does the same thing, to be honest. And then you're doing 2 damage apiece, which means they're rolling for feel no pains, but every time they fail 1 out of 2, they're going to die. Oh, it's just that with the Vow of Carnage, man. They put out 60 Plague Bearers, and you're getting like 3 or 4 attacks.
I think going something like double Avengers and 2 gallants is you basically use the Avenger Knight to be your anti-screen to get your gallants into the enemy's backline. You can farm the kills with the Avenger cannons just to get that extra attacks for when it eventually gets there. Yeah. But I think the one thing that Knights, certainly from the Imperial standpoint, is we don't have very much anti-horde. We don't. It's one of the biggest weaknesses of the Imperium side. Yeah. Chaos have a little bit of better answer to that by having the double events. I think that's going to be a really popular choice. And like I said, I think with the Plague Bearers being so popular, we're going to need to make it competitive. I think we're going to see a lot of double Avenger Knights.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're trying to focus that, what are you doing against the gallants that are running in your face? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of interesting things. We'll have to see how it goes. I think we'll wrap it up there. It's been a nice long one, but if you're interested in Chaos Knights, then there's nothing better to listen to than two guys ramble about them for an hour. So I've certainly enjoyed it. Have you, Simon?
Loved it. Brilliant.
Brilliant. Well, good speaking to you guys. And yeah, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And until next time, take care.